Hey guys, welcome again. Great to have you. Yeah, I have two amazing friends with me this time around. Dr. Jimmy and Dr. Paula, both from Colombia. Please, let's celebrate them. Amazing guys. They're very dear to my heart. They they took me in when I just came into the US. Drove me around, taught me how to parallel park.
Very cute.
Yeah, for your driver's license and all of that, it was their car that I used. So I'm eternally grateful to them. They're so sweet. Yeah,
It
amazing
was
guys.
snowing the day we met, remember?
Yes, Jesus
It's
Christ.
snowing
Don't
really
even remind
heavily.
me. That day, I felt like, why did I come to this country? Like, what am I doing here? My
It was
nose,
really cold.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. My nose was running.
yeah.
It was bad. It was bad. I said, really, literally said to myself, what have I done? Yeah. But anyways, okay. So guys, today we'll be talking about something really important to grad students, important to life generally in the US, and that is the imposter syndrome. That feeling of not being good enough. Am I qualified to be here? Do I deserve this? Am I smart enough? That feeling of maybe I'm not really that good. Maybe I just came from my country as the best there, but here I'm not, so yeah, we want to have that conversation. Is it really true that you're not good enough? You know, um, so yeah, this is a conversation we've had before, and we kind of outlined some things that could be causing this, some root causes of this, some sources of this, and we're just going to go over those. Hopefully, we find them helpful. Um, I know one thing we talked about was effective communication.
Mm.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Um,
So it's very important for you to be able to convey your ideas in a clear manner. And I think there were at least two aspects that we discussed that were linked to it. One was we as international students may come from a different background, perhaps a country, in our case, that does not use English as the first language.
mm,
So we inherently would have some complications, say,
yeah.
as you start the process, but also is the way maybe you have the words correctly and maybe grammatically they're organized perfectly, but your nonverbal communication isn't really matching what you're saying.
Yes.
And
Word
that
expression, right?
right, and that may cause the wrong impression.
Yes.
Now, and maybe we'll get into detail that later. But is not only being technically good, is that you're able to express that in the way that you want it to
Mm,
be received.
mm,
And that's why we think this is linked to self doubt, because
mm.
now you're going to start linking the fact that you're not communicating well with you not being capable or even thinking straight or being smart enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think effective communication is key because it can also make you feel alone because it isolates you from everyone else. There are two ways to address this. In my case, having effective communication was my biggest challenge when I came
Mm,
because I was not very good at English. I am still improving. But I think I was trying to say things and people won't get what I was saying.
mm.
Um, you
That
do
can be
do two things.
frustrating.
You either don't speak anymore and you isolate
Mm,
yourself, which
mm,
is what you shouldn't do,
mm.
or you should just understand that it's part of the process and you are gonna get better at it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's a process.
Yeah.
Even if you know or you took classes in your country, which is the case sometimes, the English that you learn is not enough for you to really survive in your day to day or in your research. But again, it's a process and you
Right.
will overcome it only if you practice.
Right.
Mm,
So
mm,
don't close yourself. If you think right now that your English is not good, don't worry, it's just a process.
mm.
And as you practice and talk to people, you will get better at it,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, yeah, and let me say that it's not just the English itself, like for those of us from Africa, we probably grew up with English, like a chunk of Africa grew up with English. But when you get here, you find out that communication is beyond just English. You know, you need to be expressive. I had that issue, I had that challenge even
Oh,
with my
yeah.
advisor.
Yeah, because
You
at
know.
the same time, all of us go through it.
Mm,
Either trying to translate your English to States English or trying to. We normally speak in Spanish in our heads and then in English. Right now, it's not the same, but it used to be that.
Right.
So that process of like translating in your head, people are looking at you like,
Yeah.
and you can see their expressions, their
Yeah.
nonverbal communication. So
Mhm.
that also doesn't make you happy.
Yeah.
But both are very important, because when you also doubt when you are speaking, people can see
Mm.
that you're having like this internal process of
Yes,
like.
this internal struggle, like,
Right.
how do I do
Right.
it? Yeah.
But again, if you're in academia, don't worry about it, because many people have to go through it. Just know that it's gonna take time, but it's gonna get better for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The thing about communication failure is that it can be frustrating. You know,
Frustrating.
when you have an idea, you have something you want to say, you want to
Mhm.
communicate, and the other person is not getting it. You know, it can be really frustrating.
It's challenging in research meetings too,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
when someone doesn't get what you are saying, and then they said, and it's like, oh, that is what I wanted to say,
Yeah.
and they are
you
like,
never-
no,
You didn't say that.
Yeah. That happens very often.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah. Okay. Another thing we talked about was
Oh.
unhealthy.
Can I add something
Okay.
just to it? It is because we're internationals, we feel more comfortable getting together with our own culture.
Mm.
So Colombians will be with Colombians, we just speak
Mm.
Spanish, Chinese, or
Yes. Nigerians will be with Nigerians.
Nigerians, and
Yeah.
speaking their own language.
Mhm.
And this, it is important to find your support system, but also don't let be
The only-
stopping you for
Yes.
practicing your English. Try to balance that, because
Yes.
that for sure
Like,
happens.
try to connect with people from here as well, right?
Right.
It's gonna help
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
as much as
that's-
possible.
Yes,
Absolutely.
that is good. That is good. Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you for that one. Okay, another thing we talked about was unhealthy comparison. You know, when you're comparing yourself with another grad student, might be senior grad student, might not even be senior grad student, you know, somebody else on a project, or even on your project as well, you know, that comparison, like,
Right.
oh, this person is doing this and all that.
Right. It's inevitable, I guess. It's common in our country as well. People will tend to say, "Oh, look, the kids of this
Yeah.
person can
Yeah,
do this. Why don't
yeah.
you do this?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and it permeates everything that you do pretty much because you grew up in that environment. So when you come here, maybe you're the one inflicting that on yourself. Like, I'm comparing to my lab mate or to my classmate because maybe they're doing much better than I am, and that, of course, will lead you to doubt of your capabilities because you know that person is acing it and you're not. But you also have to consider many other elements, and is that maybe that person started from a different level, right? Maybe that person is senior researcher,
Or is working on a
or
different
is
project.
working on a different
kind of
project,
thing.
right? So
Yeah.
how can I compare myself? That person may have a paper out, and I haven't yet. But we have been in this university for the same time, and that's where your point is super valid. Maybe that person could do everything computationally, and maybe that person get results a couple
Faster
tries
or
faster.
something. Yeah.
But maybe your work requires you to make tons of mistakes in the lab. So at no point really it is healthy to compare yourself to others from my perspective, because it is more likely for you to realize what you lack than what you ace in comparison to them.
Yeah, that self-inflicting comparisons are not good. But what do you guys think when unhealthy comparisons that come from you but come from someone else? Like someone is telling you, "Oh, why you are not like that?
Ooh.
See that
Yeah.
person. You have to get to that point. Why is it
Mm.
not happening?" What do you think about it?
Yeah, that's hard. Jimmy.
Okay, I'll try to tackle it. Well, that is trickier, right? Because maybe we'll get into this later. And I think in life you should put color into the things that you can control and that you can, have leverage on. You hardly have any leverage on how people communicate to you unless you make it clear that they're at fault at something, right? So I'm assuming in that particular scenario, let's say it could be your advisor, your boss saying, "Oh, look at someone else in the group is doing this much and you are not," because it's an unhealthy comparison in this case, and I was not expecting it, then I will feel really bad, right?
Right.
But then that's when you have to find tools to navigate it. Okay, so maybe that person, his advisor, meant it in a way to say that there are some things that I could improve it. So let's try to take it out of the context and the words that person uses specifically. Just try to read in between the lines. Maybe try to find the positive, even if there is very little in that particular comment, and try to ignore all of those aspects that may diminish you. So, it's not really you creating the comparison, it's someone else, but can I use that to maybe improve certain aspects if I take the positive side of it? But at the same time, ignore all those elements that shouldn't be there because they won't help me to grow. In general, though, I think that is a very bad thing to do. So if you're facing it, if your advisor is doing it, one element could be try to find a space, safe space where you can communicate that. It doesn't have to start with your advisor. If you could try to find people that could help you to put into words your feelings and how that can be conveyed to your advisor, if there is such a possibility.
Yeah. No, no,
Go, go.
No, 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 go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say that I like something you said, Jimmy, which is centered on your response to the comment. You know, you cannot change your advisor. You cannot. You know, sometimes, a lot of times, we try to fix our advisor. Like, that's not gonna happen. Don't even try it. Right. Many of them are old. They've been like that for years.
They're set on their ways.
It will be better your response. So, like you were saying, take the message out, trash the trash. You know, forget about those parts that hurts. You know, just try to see the positive in what he or she is saying, and then just ignore the rest. Really.
Yeah, but be careful because it doesn't mean you have to make up for their mistakes.
True.
Up to some point, you can tolerate this type of comments.
Yeah.
Because it can get to the point where it's really driving you to some extent crazy, or if it is inflicting some pain and sort of lowering your self-esteem, that is not good.
Right.
When it's
Absolutely.
and it comes to that, it comes to that point where you should talk to your advisor. I don't like the way you say this. I would prefer if you set expectations, realistic expectations, where I compare myself with my own progress instead of comparing me to others. Because I think it's not fair. Again, we have different research groups, we have different research projects, and we have different abilities, right? Research is not something that you are gonna get right from the first moment. It's a
Actually, you will not get it right from the first moment.
expect that. So know when to talk about it, and also don't make further mistakes of your advisory. Of course, you should take the best out of their message up to some point.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's an important clarification. Is as if in anything in life, I guess anything in excess is bad, right? So if there is really toxic, maybe that's not where you should be, and hopefully frank conversation will solve it, but there are other tools that you could use.
Okay, cool, nice one. Another thing we talked about was giving room for failure. I think it is normal to fail at first. I think everybody failed at first. Failed experiment, failed competition that didn't work. I think everybody. I don't know any genius who came over for PhD, and please let's talk about that. Giving room for failure.
Yeah, I think it's normal, and you are expected to fail, because if you don't fail, then or you're learning from your mistakes. We're doing new things in research. Yeah, we have some previous research that we use to base our future research, but still we're trying new things, right? And sometimes you will have experiments that won't work, and you might feel lost, right? But frustrated. But again, because you're in this process, understand that the progress you made as you go across with all those failed experiments will sometimes lead to a good discovery, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sometimes if it's failing, it's because something else. Maybe it's not that experiment that you should work on. Maybe you can get the information from it and focus on something that will help you solve the mystery behind. There are just so many ways that you can feel like you have failed too. Because if you don't produce enough data, you feel like, it's not only that the experiment failed, but sometimes my experiments don't produce as much data as I would like to, and that can feel bad. But again, I've emphasized in this of setting expectations with your advisor is one of the most important things. So the expectation is for me to do this and to do that. Is that okay with you? Yes. Okay. This is the expectation from the student, from the advisor for the student, right? But you also need to emphasize and talk to your advisor about the expectations you have as a student. I expect you to advise me in these, and orient me in this way, because sometimes there will be many advisors that will be hands off.
Mm.
And yeah, it is important for you to grow as a researcher, so you have some independence, right? That is
Right.
important, but that is completely different on be completely alone, because you're a
Yes.
team with your advisor, right?
Yes.
Right,
yes,
right,
yes.
absolutely. The room for failure, as Paula mentioned, I think is key so that you understand that this is a process and that feeling, let's say, low, not capable of, is going to be a part of the process. Why? Because it's new. Because you're working on something that you hadn't even thought of before.
Yeah.
So, of course, at the beginning, you're going to fail. Recognizing that that is inherent to the process is key for you to be able to overcome that self-doubt feeling. Doesn't mean, hopefully, there's going to be everlasting as you endure it for some time, right?
Yeah.
And you learn more and more. Then, of course, those initial self-doubts will dissipate. But this is a continuous we're learning all the time, right? It's a continuous process. So you will maybe feel to some extent that, hey, there are many more things that I should know by now. Again, it's okay. Just give yourself some room to work on those elements that you need to improve, and just that self-doubt should go away after some time. But sorry, just want to add that, as Paula said, the failure comes always when there is no perhaps a clear expectation, right?
Yeah, let's talk about
and
that.
and
Setting
and I think that Paula mentioned it already, and is that, I fail when there is something that has kind of a clear answer, right? Like I failed to run this experiment because certain things occur, right? Or I failed to publish a paper this semester because something else happened. So okay, that's going to be inherent to the process. We discussed that already. But that's when you have to set up realistic expectations, so that minimizing failure is part of the plan.
On realistic.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
It has to
Super
be
important.
realistic.
right. So by doing so, you will minimize failure. Yet it will happen. Know that is part of the process. So we have to learn to live with it, but also learn from it, so that once again we minimize how many times we fail.
How do you set realistic expectations?
At the beginning is difficult because you don't know anything, right?
You have to understand the big picture too.
Right.
And sometimes experiments fail. So what you were expecting to achieve in a semester, you might not even get up to half of it.
Right.
How do you-
So of course, maybe I guess you will overshoot always in the first semesters, but for quite a bit. And you may say, "Oh yeah, I can get all these experiments done, and I get this phase,
I can do all
I can do all of it." With time, however, you start getting, just with anything in life, I guess, with experience,
Get
you were able to
wiser.
get exactly. You're able to set certain goals are achievable within time and resources that you have. So at the beginning, but that's when your advisor can help you, right? Maybe depending on where you are pursuing your degree, there are many universities that have different resources. One of them could be as simple as meeting with your advisor every semester and setting what the goals will be for that period. If you're new, your advisor might be better at thinking what he or she thinks you can achieve during that period. As you become wiser, more experienced, then it will go both ways, right? Like, oh, I've already worked on this. I think we can achieve this in that period.
Yeah. Sometimes your advisor at first he will have very high expectations, and I think it's healthy that you, as you go, also readjust those expectations.
Yes.
I think it is important because I think it's hard for students to kickstart their project.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't have seniors, it's even harder.
Mm.
Sometimes it's even harder if their advisors have different expectations than them.
Right.
That is one.
Right.
The other thing is when the student think that the advisor has those expectations,
But doesn't.
but doesn't.
Yes.
So I think my advisor wants A, B, C, D, but I haven't talked to him, but I have to give it all,
Mm.
And in realistic, speaking like from an advisor, which I'm not, the advisor would only want them to do A and B, right?
Mm.
But he wants to meet all the A, B, C, D. It's not
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Then you put a lot of pressure on yourself.
and this is for your advisor and for your boss. Even if you're in the industry, this is important.
Right.
Yes.
If they are not open to talk to you about expectations, then I don't think it is a good advisor.
Right.
Really think.
Period. Since
Yeah.
Paula. Period.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, it may seem different, but an advisor is running a small company in a way, right?
Right.
A small research enterprise. And we don't get trained as PhDs to be project managers, really. You kind of learn a few things along the way, but you really are not. So many of them don't know how to navigate that very well, and therefore that relies then later on the student to be able to carry out things. However, there is the expectation that as an advisor, you'll get the correct advice and the right path to go along the research journey. Of course, not perfect, but that's the expectation from our end.
Okay, great. So let's talk a little more now about how to overcome this.
Right.
We had that conversation as
Yes.
well. What are some ways to overcome this? We talked about building a support system. We talked about self-compassion. So yeah, let's pick one.
You want to say?
Yeah, so self-compassion, I think it is really important because sometimes you would look at the great things in other people. So
Mhm.
Elijah, very intelligent, very capable, you as well. And sometimes I will forget about my good things, right? And when you are in those times of self-doubt, sometimes you will have anxiety to depression. You don't want to get in that loop of like self-inflicting, right? And then is when it comes important to have a big thing, building a good support system. In what sense? Sometimes I am not capable of seeing the good in myself, but sometimes people will be able to see it, right?
Yes.
People that care about you be able to recognize that between people that might not nurture you as a person and people that are really sort of helping you to build not only your self-esteem but also your purpose of life, right? So for example, we are from the same research group, and I think we have created very important memories, right? We try to not only create memories but also support each other. We have talked many times about having self-doubt ourselves, right? And we will be like, no, you get this. No, yes, you could do
Yes,
this,
that's true.
right?
Cried on each other's shoulders.
Oh yeah,
several
definitely.
times.
So
Yeah.
that's gonna happen, and if you have this big support system, it's gonna help you overcome it. Now, if you right now don't have this support system, don't worry. Everything is gonna be okay too. Maybe you can look for resources from your university, counseling center, someone you can talk to, probably another faculty. If your advisor is not like the best resource right now, try to find someone that you can talk to, that you know that is helpful, and that can help you to understand where is that your self-doubt is coming from, right? Because if it's self-inflicted, you have to look at yourself. If it's from an external source, then you may have to tackle it. That's what I think.
I think that's very important. The support system can be in the form, as Paula mentioned, maybe someone in your research group. Could be friends, it could be faculty, but it could also be people that are outside of your research at all completely, and you can find maybe people with similar interests, and that could help you. So, and I think this is when we get into finding balance in your PhD life or master's life or whatever it is that you're pursuing, because you came here to get a degree, but that's not the only thing that you're being paid or asked for. You're also living your 20s and 30s, and it would be fantastic if you can get more than papers, a good experience out of it, right? And so the university, for example, will have not only therapists or specialists that could guide you through the process when it becomes real serious, or even if it is not real serious, you can also reach out to them. But you could go and maybe have access to clubs where they will share share interest with you, and maybe find spaces that are safe from a different angle. Of course, it's a different perspective, it's a completely different activity, yet it will be able to, I hope, and that happened to me, to take you out, at least even if for a second or a few minutes or hours,
That research
from that environment that is not letting you maybe think clearly. Yes, I'm not asking you to do it every day, but it's kind of like creating a habit as well, creating new interests. Back in Colombia, I didn't climb at all, but maybe I discovered it here. I did not snowboard back in Colombia, but I did discover it here. So finding other activities that can help you grounded in a way, right? Realizing that research is not the only thing that you're supposed to be doing when you're 20 or 30.